Ann Rarick, College Road.
Paul McComb.
Root blower.
We're gonna, Nancy Crowley,
Here.
Liz Cobb,
Here.
Bill Marachek here. So we have only 3 members and we have a quorum.
Okay. Welcome. Stayed around to get connected on. I appreciate it, really. This is the new world we live in, right? Until March. Yeah, exactly. So, everybody got a copy of the personnel minutes. STF, which is only our STF committee. I don't know where Bruce is today.
I had a message from him last evening that he wasn't sure because of family issues, whether he would make it live, but he would certainly try to
To
Zoom
be
for
virtual, okay.
as much as he
But I
could,
don't, doesn't look like it.
and I don't see
Yeah,
him
okay.
there.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So
as-
moved.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion or anything that anybody wants to ask? Okay. Well, approve.
And this
Aye.
is the minutes of the PSTF
Huh?
task force, correct?
right.
Not the personnel
That
board.
is right.
Okay, so that's not joint meeting business, it's meeting of the PSTF
Yeah.
first.
Last week. 2 weeks
Okay.
ago, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Taking my
Yeah.
notes for the personnel board.
Thanks for asking. Correspondence and updates. Anything anybody wants to add that we have that's not included in here?
Not included in here, if you will recall, at our last meeting, Anita Teckley volunteered to get started doing a report for us, and I understand that she is underway.
Anita's
Oh.
on the phone if you want to ask her.
I didn't want her to make a report, I just wanted to say that, you know,
What kind of report is she doing? I thought we were doing a report,
well, she has all of the materials.
but she
that-
doesn't have what we're gonna be doing between now and
True,
September.
True. So,
Okay,
what I'm saying is she has all of the materials and she's studying hard,
okay,
so
all
this is cool.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Nita. Okay. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm working on a draft invitation for the open forum that we'll be having at the end of August. That the town Corone to send out to the employees. So that's another piece that's being worked on. And Ruth and I are meeting with Mary Hartman this Thursday. Just to bring her up to speed, because she's the newest member of the select. President appointed. So that, go
Before
ahead.
we go, any
Yeah.
further- I'm sorry, but I keep hearing doorbells as people are arriving, but I don't see any changes.
Carrie LaFleur.
Carrie LaFleur,
Michael Gibbons.
anybody else I'm missing?
You have Carlene and Anita. And,
We have Chris Carmody and he's definitely not here. Okay. If people arrive and I'm not aware of it, would somebody give me a shout out?
yes, I,
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's quite all right. Let's get to the meat of our getting together today. As the Personnel Study Task Force winds down, we want to bring the Personnel Board up to speed with what we've been up to. And you got a packet that includes the first part of our report out. We still have 2 more meetings where we're working out a lot of the wording for details, and so we figured we start at the high level area and work our way toward the more detailed levels. So we're open for comments and questions and what have you.
Well, I'll start. I mean, obviously, I've got 4 areas that I'd be interested in knowing sort of your thinking, or did you explore, or did explore, and whatever. And one has to do with what activities your committee got involved with defining activities for a draft of a new personnel board charter. What recommendations? I mean, if you didn't tackle this particular topic, that
Right,
is,
we did that.
Did not.
okay,
Right.
so then I'll move on.
Okay. But
One of the big items from the town meeting discussion in 2022 had to do with Article 7. And Article 7 at the time dealt with removing the personnel board.
That was 2021.
No? Well,
it may have been both of you.
okay, well, maybe, 2020, you're right. You're right. You're right. I don't know why I said 2022. But I said
Town meeting was So
2022.
much fun.
That's right.
But
Those 2 years kind of blurred together anyway.
yeah. So the point that I wanted to explore with the task force, the article was going to remove the original article from the personnel board. Article 7 was to remove from the personnel board any role in administering the town's personnel system, transferring all responsibility for salary, benefits, and personnel policies for non-unionized employees to the town manager. Then we got into the whole discussion about we needed to take a step back, we needed a task force and so forth. So my question though is, did the task force examine, explore, discuss anything about this particular provision or this particular, that is eliminating the role of the personnel board from the personnel system?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can expect then in your final report some conclusions that you reached regarding this particular point.
Some suggestion.
Well, our suggestion, and it was stated at the last meeting, was as we were going over, if my recollection serves me right, is it was unanimous that the town retain the personnel board. That's our recommendation. That's one of the recommendations.
But I don't think that's the question you were asking though, is it?
No. What I'm asking, and I'm trying to provide some
Did we-
baseline
Okay.
of the history, in that the personnel board in 2021 wanted to eliminate the personnel board's role in administering the town's personnel policies, class comp, and move that to the town manager.
Right.
Now, that didn't happen. That did not happen. But my question to you is, did you examine that particular topic?
But no, I don't think we did. I think we kind of went around it, Bill. We kind of went into two things. One is, as you saw in the introduction, we recognize the need for more flexibility in the workforce, and policies allow the personnel board to move without having town meeting. And the bylaws are more the backbone, if you will, of the organization, of the personnel board. And so the questions we started wondering about is, are there some bylaws that should now move to being a policy? And are there other topics that instead of being worried about them being bylaws, should be made into policies? And then we did an extensive look at all the policies.
Right.
and they're all over the place.
Yes.
But I don't think what you're saying gets to the question. being
Yeah, well,
asked
I'm
here.
not sure we can
Yeah.
answer it because we didn't come at it quite that way.
At the end of the day, I think we were unanimous in, as Paul said, retaining a strong personnel board
Yeah,
with diverse candidates and retaining the role as outlined in 1985
Yeah.
and the bylaws, because as we struggled, we could not see clearly a place and a time that directed the personnel board not to do things anymore that are in the bylaws to do. Is that fair?
Could you just say what you just said again?
We believe that we will recommend that the town retain a strong personnel board as appointed by the Board of Selectmen, who are going to take an important role. And that the work that the personnel board will do will be the same as in the bylaw and the 1985 administrative code, unless and until the personnel board, not us, but the personnel board might develop
a new
This-
1985.
well, a new 1985, but Anne is fond of using transactional
Well,
and
yeah, I really believe that, back in 1955, when the Personnel Board was first formed, there was a different role for the Personnel Board. And I think everybody agrees and what we have to look at is historically, how do we make the change to a 21st century workforce and what's going to be needed to move forward? And I think that's where we are, where we're having to kind of sort of step back and look at the big picture as well as where we are in the
and
way we historically have done.
for your purposes, I think what we're trying to get across is we are making recommendations perhaps that another body, the personnel board, the board, not the board of selectmen,
Town manager
the selectmen
and the select board.
and the town manager will need to implement should that time arise. So if the personnel board in its wisdom says we have outgrown this role and it's time to transfer it to the town manager, that is something that's always possible because of this transactional administrative sort of thing. But it's not for us to say, you're going to do it this way.
Well, let me just, and I don't mean to nitpick this, but
Oh, I'm the queen
but
of
the,
nitpicking. Go for it.
but if I take a look at the task force charge,
Mhm.
under duties and responsibilities, number 2,
Yep.
it says make recommendations to the select board,
Yep.
suggesting updates to the personnel bylaw
Yep.
and on the future role of the personnel board.
Yes,
So my earlier question was whether or not you delved into specifics. I mean, a general statement, okay, serves a general purpose, but I think what I was looking for, hopefully, was specifics. Specifics,
You're gonna have, in the final report, there are gonna be 2 matrices. One is one that goes bylaw by bylaw with recommendations to keep, amend, or get rid of. And it's gonna speak to whose roles are gonna be responsible for that.
right, but see, I think that's fine. I'm glad that you're doing that.
Yeah,
But I'm still trying to focus on the things that I think are in real need of help. One is, what is the future role of the personnel board? And that has, and maybe it'll be in future meetings that take place, but there's a need to, I think, come up with specifics.
Yeah.
we
And-
have, I think, some specifics insofar as we have recommended that the personnel board meet more regularly, more often, and be provided with the
Yeah.
sufficient documentation to make your decisions.
Then that's great. But the point is that that's all still the same. The same is personnel board is tasked with having these meetings. We go through comp and classification. Amy is very good at providing us with all of the backup and necessary, but that's all we do. We rubber stamp. We rubber stamp. And that's not what I
What will likely not indicate that.
will not indicate what, I'm sorry, Paul.
Our report does not suggest rubber stamping anything.
No. No,
Okay, but then I'm saying, if you could help us out by what should we be doing? I mean,
Looking at the workforce in terms of projections,
okay,
turnover, development.
so that is
succession
what
planning.
that's what I hope
Yep.
you will add as a part of your your report.
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, and I think in one of the things this is me talking now. I'm not sure we have all used the same language, but I see the HR department as the group that is responsible for the payroll and making sure that, everything that an employee needs to do their job is taken care of. I see the personnel board as looking at all the strategic stuff that goes into setting up, making sure those things are in place.
Can I
Yeah.
interject? I'm new on this committee and new to the town, so I know most everyone now, but I'm an outsider still, and I'm gonna hold on to that for a little bit so I can, look at this with a jaundiced eye. So I read through all of the PSTF materials to date. So all of your meeting minutes and agendas and all of the materials.
Yep.
And of course, through Bill, and mostly through Bill and Nancy, we haven't had a chance to
Right.
meet one-on-one
Right.
yet, but have had a chance to understand what the personnel board is looking at. And also Amy Foley has been very helpful in giving me time to answer my innumerable questions about what is happening. So the way I see, I'm going to take a big step back and see what I think is happening, even in the dialogue here. The personnel task force is taking a systems-wide look at things. And the personnel board is getting bogged down in details where they're given bits of information, but they don't really, in my opinion, Bill, we don't really have the big picture. And a lot of that has been held in the HR department. Now, the reason I think that's happening is that the systemic issues are imbalanced. I don't think that that's, I think that's happened over time, as we could see from Mr. Perry's materials that he sent, and Anita Techley, she put in some materials. I read those materials. There's a lot of transition that's happened. It doesn't seem to be in the bylaws, right? So there's systemic change without systemic operational change.
Right.
I think that's a problem. I do see we have a chance right now with a new town manager. She's in our last meeting, minutes were done. I'm charged with those minutes, sent them in this morning from last Thursday night. So more timely in future. But what we had was some changes that our new town manager is moving forward with that sound pretty reasonable from the way that we were able to look over the materials and had some support from Amy and others who are the managers. But we didn't really have a big picture understanding of what the goals of the town manager are. Now, I give that example because I think that we're looking at the personnel task force and the personnel board as a dual today in this meeting. But I would much prefer to have a broader systemic understanding of where things are changing. The way I saw it and the notes that I took after reading the materials is that I haven't been here, 4 months? I haven't seen the town manager yet. Now, of course, we have a new town manager, but why aren't we having that interaction? If you look at the 1985, 86 materials that Ned supplied, what that showed was regular meetings. In
Right.
one of them at the end, it says monthly or bi-monthly, twice a month, meetings with groups of town employees. We haven't had that opportunity either, right? So I think that as the narrowing of, and where, Bill, your points about where the personnel task force, the personnel board is really getting into comp and classification only, that does look a bit redundant. I was
Yeah.
struggling with that last Thursday night too. But I think that the problem here is that we're not seeing the town manager. We're not seeing and learning more from employees. And if that's the role that the personnel board is to take, that isn't clear to me yet how that's resolved. And I didn't honestly see all of that mentioned in the personnel task force
Which is not our charge.
materials.
That's why the charge is in here, because we were supposed to look at the bylaws.
Okay,
So we were supposed to look at it from the bylaw perspective rather
Yeah.
than.
Right.
the
but a systemic
You're
look
right.
sounds
You're
much
right.
more energizing
Yeah.
for
Yes.
me as a member of the personnel board. I'd love
Totally
to
agree.
understand what, in the survey, the redacted survey, there's a lot of comments of, we don't know where to go, we have some issues, but we don't have any voice. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, to make people feel more welcome after a pandemic in the 21st century and so forth. Is that the role of the personnel board? I can't say that. I'm not new. I can't say that, but I do think that's what's missing, is that there's not enough of a, systemic organizational approach to, giving a big
Everything.
hug to these
It's
employees.
Bigger than onboarding.
It's
But
bigger
it's-
than onboarding. It's maintaining, it's feeling valued. There are a lot of comments
Mhm.
from employees about not feeling valued. And I think if we're able to address those bigger issues, if it's the personnel board or not, I'm not sure again, but I think that isn't the struggle for the personnel board, is having a one line in where, honestly, Amy's doing her best to give us materials and ask appropriately given the bylaws, but I'd love to have us have regular meetings with the town manager to be on the select board agenda so that we're understanding how we're interacting and not be a solo committee. I don't think that's effective.
No.
So those are my perspectives after reading all your materials and learning as much as I have from the personnel board so far. And I do think that if it looks like it's atrophied on the personnel board, it feels like that's why there were less and less opportunities given to the personnel board to actually take that broader role.
Right.
So I don't, Paul, when we met on the way in, you said, I'm from the evil PSTF. And I don't see that at all.
No, I-
I know you were teasing,
I
but
tend
there
to
is
joke
a
around.
sense of anxiety that I don't think is necessary. I think that we're all on the right side. We're all on the same side to really make
Yes.
sure that we
Right.
embrace our employees in a way that makes them feel valued and they're excied to be here. I'm excited
And
to
also
be here
retain them.
and
that's-
retain
That's,
them.
that's one of the, that
Right.
was one of the biggest ahas early
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
was how many people have left in the
Right.
last 5
Right,
years.
and I've never seen an overview of how many have left, where are we, how many are vacant?
Yeah.
How can we get to people to help people, team up and find people for jobs? I
Yeah.
mean, I think everyone except me has wonderful contacts around the area and could help do that. So
Right.
I do think that in partnership, we could go forward and not in anxiety or antagonism, because I think that's so important that if it's the PB or the PSTF or what, but if we are not working in partnership and bringing that to mean the town manager, she has specific goals. I see the hints at it, right? With what we were asked to revise in terms of positions. And I am excited to give her that opportunity, but the last thing I guess I'll say, and I'll get off my soapbox here, but the last thing I'd say is that for a town manager not to have a group of HR specialists, people who have experience to bounce ideas off of as she changes that org structure to make it more effective, I think is a miss
Yeah.
for us as a community where
Yeah.
we could be helping her succeed in every way, shape, and form.
Right.
And that's the last thing. I'm raising my hand to do that, whether it's in whatever committee it becomes described in the end. Okay, so then I'll stop and thank you very much for listening to me.
I just have one comment to that, Liz,
Yeah.
is that you may be new, but you catch on quick.
Well, I worked in a big corporation. It was very similar.
Okay.
So,
But I would also like to say too, that, and I've been on the board for quite a while, and, I think we addressed even in a regular meeting that really it has certainly very, very boring with just having the comp and the classification. I'll be honest with you, we would have done more if we had been given more to do. And I think that's what's happened over years. And basically, I read something, a report that for 20 years, that there hasn't been. And yes, we did have less meetings because we didn't have very much to do. And we would have been very happy to do that. And I think the other thing that came in too, I often thought from my nursing perspective is, human resources, resident, employee confidentiality, and how much would we as a volunteer be able to get involved with issues with it?
Yeah.
That was a huge thing. I kept on thinking that that's something that we probably, would be held back on because of the
Legal
whole,
issues.
whole
Yeah.
legal thing.
Yeah.
So I do feel that everything that we needed to do, we were well prepared for what we were doing at a meeting. Amy did a great job, but it has been, we all wished we had something more to do, that we were more productive. And so that's the one thing. I don't feel that the personnel board should be disbanded at all. I feel that it should definitely be. I think that we should truly have more to do. And help the town. It sounds from the employee thing. I think this new company that's going to go in and start to work on that is going to be able to give us a ton of information. So I really welcome that. So I just
due
feel,
date on that.
I know there's an August 4th meeting, if I remember, there's an August 4th meeting, and I think, Bill, you're there with the team. And then I think there's an employee, a whole big employee one in August,
August
or is it
29, I
September or
think.
something?
No,
Well,
not the
29th is
29th.
theirs,
Oh, sorry.
but it's,
That's
it might
No,
be
it's hard
September. Yeah,
palpitations.
no, it might be September, but there's another big meeting.
Okay.
So that would be great. I think, and if you read the list of what they're gonna do, it's huge. So it should be able to come up with a lot of information for us, and we should be able to move on that. So I will say to you personally, that after being on for so long and doing what we were asked to do, and not doing things that we wished we had other stuff, I felt sometimes it was negative towards the personnel board from the committee. And that actually was hard, because I felt like we did what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And many times I think I have thought about, what else can we do? And if this is the only thing, this is I'll be honest, very boring. So, so I think it's a great thing that we have the task force, but I think you need to take into consideration that those that have been on the board, and there's been many of us, select person in the future, or that's already been on board, that we would have done more. And so that you have to understand this has been going on for a long time.
Well, I like Liz's comment about this being systemic issues. It's not, it's not about personalities. It's not
Right.
about
Right,
that. It's really about how did we get to where we're
right.
chopped off
And I
from
think,
the collaboration.
I think it's important just to mention that the body in town that has the input, the greatest input in this is the select board.
Mhm.
I mean, they're the ones who I would look to summarize, consolidate,
Yeah,
help guide the personnel board's future.
yeah.
We, as the personnel board, or you as the task force,
Yeah.
can offer whatever suggestion, which is, I encourage again, the task force to specifically do that.
Yeah.
We on the personnel board can brainstorm that as well. But ultimately, we rely upon the select board. Now, that's a group of people who have a lot to do already.
Yeah.
And I can see that as we get into trying to prepare things for the 2023 town meeting. I mean, this is a large topic,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
it
agree.
is.
But anyway, it's good, it's important. It'll benefit everybody in this room as well as the employees. So we got to move ahead.
Yeah.
I've got a couple other questions or areas so
Go
that,
ahead.
I just do want, can I just make one comment to Nancy? I think sitting at the last meeting in the same spot in this room, and I've said multiple times or several times during a couple of meetings is you folks are only going to be as good as what you're given.
Right.
To something to that effect, being that if nothing's being handed to you to be involved in the personnel bylaws go into a great deal of, these things should be looked at for class.
Right.
There's just a lot within the four corners of that document. And then so I want to assure you that I understand that there's a disconnect. You're just not getting,
Right, right.
you're not being fed what you need.
And that's the only thing that we know, because I don't know 20 years ago, were people given more and what were they given? I only know what we've been given over this period of time.
Right.
And so,
Right.
anyways,
But
but
if you take that jump of what Liz was talking
Right.
about from when Ned Perry gave copies
Right.
that are on there about, this is what the personnel board was doing
yeah,
during the annual town report.
right,
And I can attest to that because I was an employee then
right.
I was there. So this is not wishful thinking. It's exactly right. So.
So,
Can I make an additional comment? So if we look back at those materials from 1985, and I'm looking over because Ned Perry was the one to supply those materials, it was clear that it was a sociable report, right? That we write differently now. We're more legalistic now. Unfortunately, decade by decade, we get legalistic. A child's at the pool the other day, somebody got hit by an umbrella and she said, "Do you think she'll sue?" She was 8 years old. Oh my goodness. That's not where I want the world to go. But this is also a fact. So when Bill was talking earlier about the idea that where do we fit in without, getting harming, privacy issues and so forth, I think those issues are more prominent today than they were at that time. And we do have to recognize and then address them specifically. But then, Nancy, to bring in your point, and if we do, then let's do more, right? And have it clarified what those roles can be without feeling the hesitancy of making sure that we're legally doing the appropriate things. And Amy, you and I have talked, I know you're on mute, but we've talked too, where you had the same concern as an HR person, and then what goes into public meeting law and so forth, that those dialogues then could, if we bring up sensitive materials, could they be used inappropriately? So those are real concerns for all the people involved. And I also think we do have to find a way around that. Because
Exactly.
otherwise we're siloed and we're stymied from,
No, but the very thing you're trying to keep from happening ends up happening anyway.
I think it's encouraging that somebody, Liz, is from a corporate world, that you know what the corporate world is doing right now.
Yeah.
In this century. So having that mix or a new face there, I think is
And
very encouraging.
that's something that we have spoken of in terms of what's the select board's role. The select board's role
Right.
here is to appoint strong, qualified, diverse. You just don't magically appear.
now the problem though is that, I guess historically, at least for the last decade, it's been almost impossible to have 5-member on the personnel board.
It's
Why?
tough.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't have the answers, but
Right.
when you have somebody who wants to be on and has some minimum qualifications, you're probably not going to say, sorry, you need to wait a year. Because I don't know if that's ever happened.
I think back, basically, I think I remember Nancy Bucas was on when I came on, but it was back and we did have 5. I mean, there was a time when we did have 5. I don't really remember a lot more being done. Maybe a few things here and there, but I think we all felt that HIPAA and the privacy and employee, you know, the employees, and we were volunteers. We were never given the chance. But
And
I
that's-
certainly think that it would be a plus. I think that's, you know,
We
something.
have
that-
recognized your situation and we have felt for it and we have, you know, tried to put it in polite language
Right.
that, you know, we recognize the personnel board has a lot that they could be doing, but haven't been
Right.
able.
I want to add though, tag on to that, and I know we have a time limit here, but
Yeah.
each board in town, in my opinion, has a responsibility to take a look at what they're doing and to propose what they should be doing.
Yeah,
We should not have to wait for somebody to say, okay, go ahead and do that. I think if we or any other board feels like there's a need, then we can
you can do it.
coordinate,
Yeah.
communicate with our liaison, our select board liaison. That's the checkpoint. And if there's no objection, then we go ahead and do that. Now, there are some limitations in this, obviously, is we have no budget. We are volunteers. And having rigorous time schedules, having the need for information that only can come or can more readily come from spending money, I mean, that's outside our scope right now. So we just have to, I think the board, myself as a chair, has a responsibility to everybody in this room to propose topics, propose things for us to do. And I've been the chair, I guess, for a year, so, you know, I obviously haven't done that. But I think now we've got 3 solid members here. We've had 4, we've had more. But I think there's a willingness to do that and to tackle the, and I would like to encourage the select board to, you know, in its deliberations as gets ready for the town meeting 2023 and whatever bylaw, you know, amendment needs to be presented is, you know, that this is given thought, and I'm sure it will be. I mean, I have no doubt about that.
And I sometimes think too, thinking of it, that I don't want to say that, you know, where I'm coming from, that we felt lonely in our meetings, you know, but basically it was us and anybody that came before looking for change in comfort class or stuff like that with Amy. But it would be really nice to have other members like a select board, the town manager, a couple of the other directors. Now, they do come if they've got something to put on and look for changes, but it would be nice to have that interaction. I think it would help us out. I think the most important thing is from a human rights, because I've worked in this kind of thing, and the HIPAA and stuff, that we know exactly what we can ask and how we can go far with things, because it would be wonderful to be able to meet with employees and be able to help in those kinds of ways. But we have to have a lot of guidance.
And, you know, just recently in the past year, the town has undertaken DEI focus. Well, all of those issues are going to be in our workforce.
Right.
I
Where,
don't see that coordinated yet, right? Is that your point? I mean, there's,
yeah,
yeah.
you know, here's a role, here's a focus. Here you can both be on the receiving end and on the generating end of information sharing.
Mhm.
And that would be, you know, a huge benefit for the town.
I want to move on so that we can.
We've done 2, right?
Well,
Now
2
we're
of my
number
things,
3.
and I
Yeah.
have to say, I didn't coordinate with Nancy or Liz on this, but I'm anticipating that the personnel board might need to survey the employees, or, you know, some other board might need to survey the
Uh-huh.
employees. So I'm curious, what lessons were learned? What lessons were learned by the task force in their conducting a survey, which is it's a pretty
Which we
major
had,
task.
which we had a lot of help from Erin with.
So what worked
Get in
what-
touch with Aaron.
And what,
I'm having her do it.
and what would you do differently?
I don't know what I'd do differently, but I did learn a lot. And the biggest thing I learned was not to clump huge bits together. If you need to know something, ask one question at a time instead of thinking in terms of, oh,
Aggregate groups.
yeah, what do you know about, this list? No, or do you know about this list? That employee might be saying, well, I know about A and G and maybe a little bit about, and I can't answer your question fairly because the question setter did it poorly. So it took us a while. We went from 15 questions to 50 questions to 35 questions, trying to do the best job for clarity. And of course, we were looking to listen. We didn't have a specific purpose for training needs or help me with what else we could have searched for. But, we said the task force is supposed to be listening to various stakeholders. Well, what can we hear and learn from employees? It's going to be different from employee or
It was not to be job satisfaction. For example,
just,
we
what's
did not
the
want,
current situation?
yeah, it was just a current situation.
But I know that the HR department has a survey that they use. I know that different departments in town have used successfully surveys about parking and traffic and recreation. And, there's a lot of skill out there. And
A survey, from my experience, when I've done many of them, with employees, it's a science. I mean, this
It
isn't,
is.
Yeah,
this just isn't a dartboard and you throw a dart and say, oh, okay, that's a
We
question.
spent a lot of hours phrasing these questions.
Good, well, so I want to move on. I want to move on because that's helpful.
introduce yourself to SurveyMonkey because we found.
No, I have used SurveyMonkey extensively in some pro bono
Well, and the
nonprofit
town,
work.
and the town manager also had a chance to see the questions ahead of time.
Okay. The last one has to do with what research was conducted on other municipal
Wow.
Wait a minute, I need the
Personnel.
punchlines.
personnel bylaws.
Uh-huh.
Did you examine a comparable set of municipalities that you would say were on the same level? Did you then review the personnel bylaws from each one of these communities and form, best practice?
that was a difficult task. We all did a lot of diving into
Different towns.
different towns. Concord is very unique, as we all know, in a bunch of different ways, but the specific one employee-wise is we're primarily non-union. Most municipalities are union. And it's an entirely different ballgame for a union. The town of Maynard is 100% union. The administrative staff, the custodial staff, the police, fire, every aspect of Maynard is union. So that's a negotiated thing, so there there were a couple that I found that, yes, we did look at that, and that was the Collings Institute was helping out. There were two towns that they did a study on.
Right, Chester and
Yeah, there was,
another L.
right.
We've got those studies if you want to look
Yeah.
at them,
So
because they came out.
the answer to your question is yes. You take, for example, Littleton, their personnel board, and we also looked at the makeup of the personnel board. This is, as a topic for discussion, and there are some, for example, Littleton comes to mind, and I think I'm right about this. the personnel board has a member of the select board. And it also has a member of the FinCom. It's just a different way of organizing the, so and to answer your question, I think is emphatically yes. We did look at as much as
MMA
possible.
has a lot of information.
Okay,
Mass
Okay.
Municipal Association.
And we looked at that to a great, yes, MMA is a great resource.
And I will say that the company that, it's not, remaining is USA, and there's something before it, and I didn't bring the paper, but there's a huge list of what they're gonna do, and the top of the list is they're gonna look at other communities. That's the first thing.
this is
So,
HR Gov.
yeah, HR Gov, sorry.
Oh.
Anyways, I think that will make a huge difference, will give us a lot of information, and so I don't know exactly, I know that, I think maybe Erin is the one that sent out that thing to us, if I recall, Erin Moriarty,
Which
gonna do. I think
Oh.
it came out.
she might have, but it probably
yeah.
came from HR
Yeah.
Marie, maybe.
I don't know, but anyways, it was very,
Kelly Hebert.
yeah,
Ah,
very,
yes.
Kelly, right,
Yeah.
very telling. There
Yeah,
was so much
yeah.
information in there. I think
Yeah,
it was
a lot.
really gonna be wonderful. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get a lot out of that. and We'll know.
5:30?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So I've occupied a tremendous amount of time, and you have been gracious enough to fill in a lot of good information, and I appreciate that. I don't know if Nancy or
I
Liz
pretty
have any
much-
other.
You asked a fair amount. I already got involved with talking about human resources and my idea of not being able to really do that. The new company, I talked about that. And a lot of the other stuff, Liz mentioned a few things. So I think that,
Well, you don't have to wait for another meeting to ask the question.
Yeah. yeah, so.
I have a
Yeah.
couple of points. So I went to a kind of to-do list.
Yeah.
And again, looking at that structural level. So what I thought, and it doesn't pertain specifically to the personnel board or the personnel task force. The S is support, is that?
Study.
Study, okay. PSTF, okay, thanks. So, but it did, looking over all the materials, here are some comments that I had. Use an up-to-date org chart that contains employee names attached to the positions as well as a classification assignment to each position. Some is,
We can do that.
yeah, and some are here,
Yeah.
right? But it would be,
It's not complete.
it's not complete,
It's-
right?
We will have it complete. in the
Yeah,
final.
and that would be wonderful as we talk with the town manager or
Yeah.
whoever ends up being that liaison, but really to strategically engage with the town manager and plans for, for things so that it's not just comp and classification. The org flow charges, on the town website, it's not immediately available. It should show current vacancies. I think that would help really resolve irregularities in classification or reclassifications and so forth, and help current employees see what's happening and where they could look. So not just for the personnel board, but for the employees. I think those org charts being up to date would be enormously helpful. I guess we've all stated this already, but regular meetings with town employees and with the town manager. The select board, I'd add to that too, as Bill and Nancy, I think you both stated. Speed of reaction to town employees' needs is important. I think this came out of the feedback from the survey. And I could see what you meant, Ruth, that you asked a question and they answered what they wanted to, because they needed to say it somewhere and they said it there. And a lot of what they said is it's too slow. In my view, and I think in our discussions, if I'm correct, some of that happens because things have to go to town meeting once a year to get reclassifications or whatever. So I'm really concerned.
Your board is allowed to make interim decisions.
They are, and they have, and that would, if I were an employee, I'd be pretty nervous if I was sitting there waiting for a once a year where the town meeting's rather erratic and run by about 300 people out of 18,000. So for me, the town meeting is not the place. 17,836, let's be clear.
Take
But
out the
it's,
prison.
Well,
Two prisons.
and take out the children and take out the non-voters. Okay, so whatever that figure is, it's not coming to town meeting. let's be clear, 350, 360 people, that's all there were there. And that to me is
That's
just
a-
not the way to run
When
anything.
the issues are so big.
They're huge. And for an individual, they're life setting, right? So the idea that classification is hanging on a town meeting where it's the whim of whoever's there at the time, I just think that's not responsible for these employees. So that's my position on that. Speed of reaction, yeah, I said that. Health insurance, clearly something, this one, it does, these three comments, there's one more. These come first and foremost before any structural changes that are needed. The health insurance thing has got to be solved. I mean, the country is a mess, but we can't be part of that. We have to be part of the solution, and certainly for the people that we call our own employees.
Yeah.
Transparency of personnel board meetings, minutes and clarifications of roles. I think that is overdue. I like the idea of really assessing who should be on and the role of the select board and making sure that happens. I've made this very clear to many people, but I put in 3 cards to try to volunteer for things before I was ever, and only got my card noticed when I went through a back door from somebody in the know who got me to the person who got me appointed to the personnel board. But I was waiting a year.
Oh, my.
So there, I cannot be the only one.
No,
Can't. And now I've had a second meeting say, we'd like to have you on our board too, because we're down numbers. And I'm like, I can't be the only one, people. And also I can't do 2 boards, right? That's not appropriate. So,
Unless you're Nancy.
but I'm not as skilled as Nancy. But I do,
The board is a committee, so I'm on this
Okay.
board. I'm on other boards, but they're not related to the
They're not
town.
town
Yeah.
appointed boards.
So that was the trade-off. It was a committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm not fussed.
Although I don't understand, I mean, sometimes you have to look at things differently, and I think the town's been really tight on a lot of things, but some things like that I'm on a board, I could be on a town committee too, you know, that there's so many people that would like to do that.
Yes.
So,
What I would have loved to have seen is a table at town meeting. If those are the active people in town,
There you
where
go.
was the,
A recruitment
let's,
time.
yes, we
Yeah.
need 3 for this town, you know, this is
Exactly.
really hard to figure it out. You can go to the towngov.gov, it's not up to date. So,
So
you know,
Right.
so these are things that are keeping us all in the dark, I think, and
Yeah.
it's very concerning. So
Well, the reason we
transparency
put
is
the charge in
important.
there is to remind you, we were kept on the, I was a very narrow
Yeah.
path.
Right, but out of what you found
Yeah.
were my last comments. It
Yeah.
was from listening as you wanted to do to
Right.
employees to say, there are some major issues that can't wait. And there's some then structural and institutional things that we all could look at
Yeah.
in partnership.
Yeah.
And that's the end of my comments. Sorry to get so heated.
No, that's
No,
great.
Okay.
Great comments.
Right.
They're-
and we will need really good guidelines in order to do some of the jobs that, some of the things that we've never done before, particularly relationships with employees. I mean. we
Well, think of
really
the talent,
need
just
really,
these 3 people
really,
sitting in front of us.
really.
You have an HR background, Bill, watch some of, I think during the very first meeting of our, I saw that Nancy was there. And I made a comment about the wealth of
Oh, okay, okay.
Experience and
experience,
knowledge.
whether you go from a hospital to running a major medical facility, and it just,
You're so
we-
good. I think
we
you
need
should
this
do some
talent.
resumes.
this talent
There
is,
you go.
there's a lot of talent in this town.
So, but I think this has been I'm just saying, I think this has been a great meeting, and I think it's been really more of an eye opener to know everything you've gone through, and that basically you did take into consideration that we were doing the job that we were asked to do
Yes.
and nothing more.
Right.
And I think we said many times that we'd love to do more. So anyways, so hopefully that will come, you know.
Yep.
So I think that's really
Good.
important.
I'm looking at the clock and I'm trying to honor the fact that we were supposed to start at 4, but we didn't. I would like to just point out upcoming meetings that we've got. We're going to meet, the task force is going to meet August 8th here in this room. You're welcome to join us by hybrid or just come and.
But this is so
in-
much
in
fun.
chairs. The September one, we can't have here because that's going to be
Election.
election days.
Oh, right. Right.
So stay tuned.
Is that what day was that? The September one?
That was the September 6th one I'm talking about. The
And I'm
planned
sorry, what
public
was the
hearing-
time
I'm
on
sorry?
August 8th, the time of the
4
meeting?
PM.
It's right on the agenda.
Okay, all right.
Then we have a planned public hearing, and I'd hope you would be there for that. It's going to be August 29th at 1 PM. And we're going to do it at the CMLP,
Oh, okay, the light plan. Okay,
the light plant.
Okay.
Because it's good parking, for one thing. And it sounds like they're gonna really help us out with making it hybrid.
all right,
So employees can come in either by Zoom or they can come in person. And the same with the public.
right, right,
So everybody has a chance to come and hear an overview of what we've been up to
okay.
and get their comments and just listen. So we want to do that before we meet with the select.
It's actually a forum.
Yes.
That's what we were told. It's not a hearing because
Suggestion.
Hopefully the
I think
employees
it
will
was a
feel
need or
comfortable.
So we have
talking
about
things.
5
I really
minutes
hope
for
so.
public comment.
Oh, behind you?
Yes.
Hi, great meeting. Thank you for meeting together both boards. I think that's really helpful for the select board, and I especially appreciate Liz. You're like a breath of fresh air. I think we really need that. And Carrie is working really hard to address some of the issues you brought up. Yes, this is not the only committee that's had those volunteer problems with the software and the personnel turnover. And Carrie inherited a really bad system, but she's working hard to. And we do have a recruitment table at Ag Day, which is, we had it last year and we got a lot of people to sign up. At that time, it was called green cards.
Right,
Now they're called volunteer cards, which is a
Which is good.
DEI. And specifically, one of the recommendations that you made, Liz, I agree 100%, but the recommendation is when the personnel board approves, as they did this week, several
right,
changes to specific
Class and
job
comp.
classifications and titles.
right.
Town meeting then has to ratify it.
Right.
And that's I've been a town employee. It's a horrible way to live, holding your breath all those months.
Yeah.
However, I've been interested the whole time to see what the task force is going to come up with. What is the best practice to address this problem? This is a state law.
Mhm.
This is a state problem. I'm fascinated to see what you guys are going to recommend. And finally, I have one question about your introduction. It says the employees who have employees who have left and not just retired from 2015 to 2020. We had over 50% of the town workforce leave for other jobs. I really didn't know that. Being on the select board.
Picture us, we were
What-
stunned.
Wow.
What
Like I
is,
said, it's done us too.
what is the source for that? Can you send me the data or?
That's me on the source. I think I told you that when we met.
Yeah,
I'm
but
quite sure I
is this
did, but
anecdotal or do we have?
Oh, no.
I've offered this up.
Right.
Nobody seems interested.
I
Before now, nobody
I
seems
want to see
interested.
it. I'm in shock. Can you send a copy of it around?
I actually have the file with me.
Oh, fantastic.
I
Thank you.
can't give it to you because it's the
No, no.
only copy I have, but.
Do you have in relationship to maybe some other towns? I mean, there's so many people that have, I can just tell you in nursing alone and all my assisted livings, it is like amazing.
Again, that was really not our
Right.
purview.
I know, I know, I know, I know.
We tripped
But
over it.
maybe
And once you
the,
know it,
maybe
you
the
can't-
HR gov will do it.
I mean, we kept, it was like an octopus. It was,
The process of this, Terry, was, if we go back to one of the original meetings, and this was just general things we were trying to collect
Yeah.
from the HR.
Yeah.
And there was, I don't know, there were issues. I withdrew the question, and I got the data from the retirement board.
Oh, the source.
So I waited weeks, and then I ended up getting it in 16 hours.
See,
From
but,
the-
but Terry, I would
It's
encourage
it's
you,
6 years of data of people leaving that are not retired.
But they have something in the
went
system.
to another
Yeah.
job. And that's over 50%, and it's holding steady, and that's before COVID, during COVID, and now post-COVID.
Is there like a one-page summary of that you can, Erin can send out, or?
It's some,
I think it's something the whole select board is gonna want to know
but
about.
I think you should get that information from Amy.
Yeah.
That
I think
Amy,
so too.
Amy is the record keeper of employees and
Amy, is
employee
that
data.
something that you could put together and send out to the two committees represented here? I think you're on mute, but I don't know if you can
She can
answer.
unmute herself.
There she
That's
goes.
easy. There she is.
Hi, yeah, if I get a specific request of the dates and the time we can do that. When I get a request for new data, I work with the town manager as needed to determine about producing reports, but I don't see an issue with that. I think we can do that. I just need to understand which employee groups you're looking for. So usually, sometimes there's questions, like you said, which ones are retirement eligible, temporary, whatever. So I'll need somebody to work with so that I can make sure I get the right report for you.
Well, also you
Okay,
wonder,
I will send you a request, Amy, and copy Terry. Thank
Okay.
you.
you also have to wonder if they if they were in a certain job, did they go to another company in that job, or have they changed
We don't know.
professions?
We
Because
won't
so
know
many
that.
have completely changed what they did before.
Yeah.
The big
Um,
return. Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the concerns that I have, and I think Amy will likely address this, is the definition of turnover. There are all kinds of different definitions that one can use. So I just think one needs to be careful about what the definition
Yeah.
is before you just arbitrarily say X is the turnover. It's much more involved than that.
these are benefit eligible employees, which is a specific criteria that left the town and went somewhere else. So it's effectively full-time employees that left and had another job, not retirements. It's turnover. I'm quite sure this data will give a real good snapshot, if you will, at the.
And I think if we just look at that as that's the canary in the coal mine.
Right.
Right? And then we have to do, as Bill has described, really break down that figure and understand categories, but full-time employees, retirement benefits, that's a good start, right? And if you need help, I'll be happy to.
Are they union, non-union?
It's the whole town.
What about
Not,
school?
no. it
No, they're
didn't.
not union.
Oh,
So
that's
this
tough.
again
But this is
Provide.
this is specific.
Yeah.
This is
Just
benefit
non-union.
eligible, not part-time. It's benefit eligible employees that were contributing to the retirement system.
Mhm.
And they did not retire and they did not work for the school department. I think it's exactly what you want to see.
Okay.
Well, you have to understand also that there's a numerator and a denominator. You have to be able to evaluate what is the employee population total and how you're going to calculate that versus the
Yeah.
number of people who've left and at what time you're going to calculate that.
It's all there.
So if that's all there, then,
It's all there.
that's a very helpful document.
It's scary. When you think of, yes, we're in pandemic. There's lots of changes that are going on. Some people have decided just to simply
Yeah.
It's
stop.
not, the reason I have 6 years of data is pre-COVID, COVID, and after COVID.
Yeah.
And we're running literally 2 or 3 employees difference a year. The drop-off rate is reasonably consistent right across the board over those 6 years, which I think is something to be learned.
So I have done your public comments. We are at 5:30.
I'm okay.
I asked her if she was all
So there
done.
we go.
Okay, so if anybody is still with us, wants to comment, let us know.
Da-da-da.
Any
Okay,
comments?
we see no comments.
Did I declare our meeting done?
I think we can. I move to adjourn.
Everybody second?
Second?
And I move
All those in favor?
I make, I motion.
to for the personnel board to adjourn. Second,
I second.
we all in favor.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
and by roll call, Ann, Ruth. Bill,
Nancy.
Liz.
thank you very much for staying and
Oh my God, it's
for
freezing.
coming here.